fuel here.
Give me fuel, give me fire, give me
Can you hit that this way?
So, you've probably been wondering where we have been, and has there been any progress with the Land Rover? Let me tell you, things have been happening, and it has been a busy time. So busy, in fact, I haven't put out a video. But let me fill you in on what's happened over the past 4 months. So, the plan was to strip all of the crap off the Land Rover I was going to keep, the one with the Holden and the Mint chassis, and place that all on the blue Land Rover. Now, this was done over a night and a morning with my mate Miles, well into the wee hours, rattle guns going, pissing off my neighbours. But we got it done. We got everything on the blue Land Rover, and I got it sold within more or less a week or so. I was even nice enough to drill out the old bolts for the door uppers on both of the doors for the new owner. But I didn't have to deal with too many tyre kickers. Now, I even managed to drive it off the property onto the car trailer, which was pretty cool. But when that Land Rover left, I also lost all of my dry storage. Well, more or less. I still had dry storage, but everything just sat on top of the Land Rover under the carport. Now, let's get back to the main story. The restoration of the good Land Rover. So when taking all the wheels off, half of the studs came with the nuts. Not really ideal, and the threads that were left behind were badly damaged. When removing the rear hubs, I noticed that there was no grease present, so this is an oil lubricated bearing. There's no seals in the axle housing, so the diff oil lubricates everything, and they weren't in too bad of a shape. They'd obviously been sitting stationary for a long time, and the seals on the back were kind of bad, so there's probably a little bit of water that had gotten in there, but yeah, the bearings on there were no match for the cold chisel and a hydraulic bearing puller. Next up, it was time to split the collar for the hub seal. Now, I've seen people drill these, but I just decided a bigger chisel and a bigger hammer was the answer. As you can see, it didn't take too long, and I made short work of the collar. Now, the next thing to do was remove all the old wheel bearings. This is made super easy if you have access to a MIG welder. Just lay a super hot fat bead on the outer race and it will shrink. Once it's shrunk, using an appropriate punch and a hammer, they just tap out. And then off camera, I also sandblasted the hubs and hit them with a coat of Zinc It Black. Facebook Marketplace saved the day once again with this $50 shop press. Now, I made up this pressing tool on my lathe, and then this made short work of getting all of the bearings in without having to resort to the brutish hammer and punch technique. And as you can see, everything fit together perfectly. Now, the next job was to clean up my nuts. So we did this with a file and some solvents I had on hand. This is to remove all of the chisel marks so I can use the correct box wrench. I know all of the bearing races are fully seated, seeing as I did it on a press, but I still tighten up the first nut, FT, very tight, and then I back it off before setting the end float, just to ensure the bearings are seated correctly. What you'll find is that you can set the end float with the first nut, but when you tighten up the second nut, the end float all but disappears. Now, in my manual, it mentions this and says you have to account for this. So you actually end up setting it quite loose, and then, or looser than you'd think. And then when you tighten up that second nut, it should squeeze it to within 0.1 to 0.15 millimeters, which is what my manual specifies.